Hello, everybody. It's your girl Marie here again to discuss another episode of And Just Like That, Season 2, Episode 5, titled Trick or Treat. Now, this episode was directed by Cynthia Nixon, who gave us in my opinions, one of the worst episodes of And Just Like That, just in terms of scene to scene execution, which was the Diwali episode. And yeah, remember where Carrie gets the green screen apartment and then chases around a comical beep, and we don't understand what the beep ever was. That horrible, horrible turd of an episode. Well, she directed that, so I did not have high hopes for this trick or treat episode. But I gotta say, I am pleasantly surprised. This particular episode, I feel so far, is the very best one that they've done for this reboot. It is the closest to the original Sex and the City feel. So bravo, Miss Nixon. I think you did a solid, good job. Like I dare say I might have even enjoyed this episode. Um, so before I get into the meat of it, I do want to say we've had an interesting week in hate watching. We have lost Real Housewife recaps. Jen has decided she can't hang with this. That it's not funny. It's not fun. And she cannot make it funny because she's like just sick of it. So after episode 4, just broke her, absolutely broke her. So she's not going to do it again until possibly when Samantha comes back. So we'll see. And of course, my personal hate watching soulmate, King Nikki, she's out of it too. I'm kind of bummed out by that one. That one stings. I was on her live. She did a live stream last weekend, and me and other members of her audience were begging her to recap episode 4. So she promised. She's like, "Yeah, I'll do it like tomorrow. I'm taking the day off, but all right, I'll get to episode 4." And then the next day, it was just like, I can't do it. It's insufferably bad. I'm out. So pour out your cosmopolitan onto the road, one for our homies who have fallen. I also want to thank you guys in the comments. Last week, I was very confused about a line. I thought it was just a terrible line. I thought it was a terrible pun. But last week, when Carrie was in Che's kitchen with Lyle, she said, "That was very shampoo of you." And apparently, it's a movie starring Goldie Hawn, who is the guy who plays Lyle, Oliver Hudson. It's his mother. So it actually turned out to be a very, very clever line. And because of all the comments, I actually watched the movie, and it's a pretty decent little slice of life movie, and Goldie Hawn is adorable in it. So thank you guys for letting me know. Okay, so let us begin with this whole debacle. It's not a debacle. Actually, this was actually pretty good, guys. I was surprised. All right, but it starts off with the worst couple in the world ever written, Che and Miranda. Miranda's alarm goes off. It is 5 a.m. And again, this whole storyline is stupid. And many of you guys pointed out last week in the comments that Steve and Miranda, their townhouse would have plenty of room. Like Miranda sleeping on a couch is ridiculous. They intentionally purchased a giant brownstone so that they would have room to grow. And by the time before the series was over, they had Steve's mom live with them, and they probably also had Magda living with them. So this idea that they don't have any space and that Miranda's just sort of doing this, I don't know why she would go all the way down to, I forget what they call this. Hudson. It's not Hudson Bay. Hudson Flats. I think is where Che lives, and then going around to Brooklyn and going back to 4th at 5 in the morning. Apparently Miranda is back in school, so that's good. At least she's doing something while she's in New York. But she wakes up at 5 a.m., and Che is all cranky because it's 5 a.m. and she just went to bed, or they just went to bed an hour ago. And in the writers' room, they spent a lot of time. I listened to the writers' room podcast, and Michael Patrick King was talking a whole lot about all the iterations of this t-shirt that Che is wearing. He just really loved the pun Georgia O'Keeffe, and he wanted to get it on just the right kind of pattern. So eventually they settled on tie-dye, and apparently they have like 4 or 5 of these shirts that they made that say Georgia O'Keeffe. And meanwhile, Che is, kind of rolled up in blankets and sleeping how like a person would, and it's in a dark room because of course it is. And so you barely even see it. So they spent like a lot of time and effort for, something you don't even really see. But Miranda gets up and she goes over to her house. And on the way, she picks up a bunch of flowers and pumpkins, and she's carving a pumpkin, and she's making pancakes for Brady, and she's apologizing to Brady that there's not any pumpkin in the pancakes, that they're just regular ass pancakes. And Brady doesn't even know why she's there. She's like, I don't need you to make my breakfast every morning. And it turns out, we find out later in the episode, that she's making it not just for Brady, but for Steve. Like, they can't function if she's not there making breakfast. Like, these are 2 grown-ass men. Brady has decided, my opinion is this. I understand now that, for a lot of kids, college doesn't make sense. It's not necessarily cost effective. I get it. But, I don't understand a parent that doesn't say immediately, okay, then what's your plan? If you're going to be an adult, what's the plan? What's your job? Where are you going? Are you going to stay here? You think you're going to stay here? Okay, you're paying rent then. Or something along the lines. My feeling is you're an adult, you're 18, you're going to have something. You're not just going to sit around, bumming around, and complaining I don't put pumpkin in your pancakes. And he wasn't. He actually seemed sort of annoyed that she's there in the first place because he's not a baby. And she's like, you got to help me decorate the stoop, and we got to carve a pumpkin together. And he's like, isn't our house scary enough? And then Miranda kind of mockingly stabs herself. And I want you guys to know also that I am on tattoo watch. I'll get into this in a minute, but I feel like her tattoo is going to disappear in some scenes, or maybe even switch wrists, because that's kind of the quality of workmanship we can expect in the series. But in this particular scene, there wasn't a good enough like wrist shot to really determine it. I think what they've done, they kept the tattoo, but they've made it like much smaller, like even smaller, so that if somebody just took a Sharpie to her wrist and just like gave her a dot, they're like, that counts. Put Cynthia out there. Okay, so now we go into, I just really dug this. I did. I loved, they go into a costume party. Charlotte is throwing a charity, I think something like a Save Our Parks costume party that apparently was modeled after something they actually do in New York City. And it's in this beautiful space by that boathouse. And again, I've visited New York several times, but it was, decades ago. And I'm not, I'm Midwestern. What can I tell you? I'm not familiar with all the cool stuff, but it looked like I've seen this building before in movies and stuff. It's an iconic space, I know. But all these people are walking up in costume, and Miranda's like, oh, Charlotte's going to be so mad we didn't dress up. And Carrie's like, what do you mean I'm dressed up? And I got to say, before this episode, like sometime last year, they were showing stills and they were showing videos of Carrie and Miranda walking with all these people around them to kind of, I don't know if it was just to sort of get interest in the show, but I was wondering if Carrie was dressed up in a costume because everybody else, it looks like fall out there, it looks like Halloween. So I was looking at Carrie, and my first thought was, she's a Mary Kay cosmetic sales girl or something, because I saw like it looked like she was clutching like a magazine, or at the time I thought it was a catalog, right? So I thought it's like Mary Kay, but then I zoomed in and I realized it's Cosmopolitan. I'm like, she's not dressed as Helen Gurley Brown, is she? And then I looked up, I go, no, Helen Gurley Brown was like stylish. And I looked up pictures of Helen Gurley Brown, And yeah, she's always a sophisticated, elegant person. She wasn't as, one note in her image like Anna Wintour, but she was always very sophisticated. And there's like one picture where she has like two bows in her hair, but like everything else is like simplified because we're focused on the bows. This is just a giant traffic accident of a million things. Helen Gurley Brown would never dress like that, would never look like that, was never blonde. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. But the only reason I would even think of Helen Gurley Brown is because her purse, it's not even a rolled up magazine, it's a Cosmopolitan clutch purse. And they used to do that in the 60s. They used to have these clutch purses that had magazine covers on them. And it was kind of a treat to see that and to look at it because you can go on Etsy and you can get these purses now where you can even, I think the designers will make them for you, but then they have them where you can put your own magazine cover in it and do whatever you want. So I think because of this episode, I'm going to make myself a purse of the June 1978 Hustler cover where they decide they're no longer going to do porn and the woman's in the meat grinder. I think I'm going to make a purse for myself like that. I think that'll be fun. But they come in and they're greeted by Charlotte, and they think Charlotte's not in costume, but Charlotte is. Charlotte's dressed as Carrie Russell, and Harry is wearing a wig, and they're playing that couple from The Americans, where the Russian spies that live next door are the Americans. And I thought this was kind of funny. If you've ever had people in your life who are fans of The Americans, they always act like Charlotte and Harry. They're like, oh my God, like, how is this not like the biggest television show in the world? How is everybody not obsessed with this show? It won several Emmys. It went on for 6 seasons, I think this thing did, and it won a Peabody Award. And I get it, it's excellent, but it's just like, I don't care. I've only seen like little bits of it here and there, and I found it kind of boring. I don't know. Maybe I got to give Americans a try. We'll see. Harry's wearing this wig. They're upgrading their wigs. This wig looks a lot better than Wiggy did last season. Miranda's $7.99 Party City wig. I feel like they spent at least a solid $20 on Amazon for Harry's wig. So that's a nice little upgrade. This was fun. All right, so now they're in a party. They're out dancing, and Anthony is dressed as a devil, and he is dancing with the incredibly fabulous LTW. She's got the coolest wig. She's got amazing earrings. She's got this tight little dress on, and at first I was like wondering why is the whole crowd standing around these two dancing, because they're not dancing that well. It's not like it's not great dancing. But then I'm realizing, it's because of the nip slips. They're all like waiting for LTW's boobs to pop out. You do get a little nip slippage, but they both look great, and I'm dying for that jacket LTW's wearing over this. The whole thing is fabulous. Then inside, Seema isn't dressed up. She is just in a normal one shoulder, and it's almost red. It's like kind of a copper colored dress. And Naya is dressed as Eartha Kitt, Batwoman. And they're discussing where to meet single men, because Naya is newly single and she's disappointed at the lack of single men at this party. And Seema's like, well, yeah, it's a charity event. It's all married men and dad bods. So you're not going to find what you're looking for here. But fear not, I'll take you out to a 5-star hotel lounge, and those places, a hotel bar, because those men have a lot of coin. And I'm like, well, that's interesting, but I mean, aren't those guys also all transient? I just assume that if you pick up somebody in a hotel because he's staying at a hotel, that you're basically entertaining a tourist for a one-night stand, which, if that's what you want to do, is fine. I just, I don't know that that'd be the place I would go, but I don't know. Let's see what these New York sophisticates do. And then, of course, we have Herbert comes to visit comes, and he's supposed to be in a George Washington costume. And anybody who knows this actor from his role as George Washington in Hamilton, they already know the reference, but he's like, oh, I'm running for office now, and I don't want to make a spectacle of myself. But I stopped it here because I wanted to show you, like, some of the costumes in the background were really sending me. Like the Josephine Baker and the Wilma Flintstone, I just loved it. Like and they were talking in the writers' room about how they wanted to make this look like a typical rich New York party where a lot of people aren't creative. And yeah, you get a lot of cheesy Batmans. There are like half the chicks are dressed as Belle from Beauty and the Beast. But they do when they hit, they hit, and some of these costumes were just really killing me. And then Anthony sees this really handsome guy from his gym with great abs, and he just assumes he's gay, so he comes up and hits on him. And then, of course, his wife, Cleopatra, comes in and rescues this dude. So that was our Anthony moment. And then we come back out to the dance floor, and all the ladies are dancing. And Carrie has a candy apple. Charlotte in the background is dancing like the biggest dork. She's doing the head waving thing. If you remember Staten Island, and they're doing this like kitty hiss growl thing with Naya. It's just so silly and it's fun and it's all the energy that I missed. I liked it. And then they pan out and there are some great costumes in here. Someone dressed as Iris Apfel, everybody, and she's like dancing with Carmen, Miranda, and Elvis, and I can't get enough of it. I love that stuff. So then LTW comes home to Herbert, and Herbert is in the actual costume, the actual Hamilton, George Washington costume. They talk about it in the writers' room that it is the exact one. I'm like, it looks close to it. No, it's the exact costume, except obviously the powdered wig. In Hamilton, they all have like their natural hair or their bald heads. They don't do the powdered wig thing. But here he has a powdered wig on, and he tells LTW, "Don't touch my hair. That's the rule, right? You don't touch my hair." Very cute scene. Okay, so then Carrie and Charlotte are at home watching the Americans, wondering why everybody's so crazy not watching the Americans. And Rock shows up, and Rock's all excited, and oh my gosh, this cool guy. I was out there outside playing in a park or something, and this cool guy comes up to me, and he wants to know if I've ever considered modeling, and it's a representative from Ralph Lauren, and I'm like, well, that's Ralph Lauren, that's really creepy. Like, and I'm thinking that's really, really creepy. But the reality was, like, back in my day, supermodels when they were in their heyday, like Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, and those '90s chicks, like pretty much all of them have the same discovery story, and all of them were discovered according to them. And I don't know how true it is, but all of them keep saying, "I was 14 years old. When I was 14." I was grocery shopping with my mom, or I was doing some sort of mundane thing, or I was hanging out with some friends at a mall when either a model agent, somebody from a modeling agency, or a photographer, it's always like a model agency or a photographer, they found me and discovered me. And I thought that trend had passed because nowadays we see more like supermodels, like the Hadids and the Jenners. They come from like reality show parents, and even I don't know how to pronounce her name, Clara Definier, whatever. Like her parents are like really rich society people. Like I feel like now most of our models just come from rich, otherwise famous socialites or what have yous. But no, I was looking it up and looking at like modern supermodel and Emily Ratajkowski or whatever, and a lot of them are still, they have the same story, 14-year-olds. Like, who is stalking 14-year-olds? It's so creepy, but this is how the whole industry kind of still runs. Kind of freaked me out. But of course, Harry's hesitant. He's like, well, that sounds really creepy. Anybody could just go get a business card made at Kinko's. Charlotte's all excited, and Charlotte's beautiful. By the way, Charlotte was very beautiful in the last scene, too. There's something with uh, the actress Christian, what's her face, Johnson or whatever, but something about when sometimes her fillers look better than others, or sometimes it doesn't look like she's as filled in. And she looks great in this episode throughout. Like, she's beautiful, and they have her in a beautiful sweater in this scene. But Charlotte's just absolutely thrilled that it's Ralph Lauren, and she was a model, and she modeled at the mall when she was the Rock's age or whatever. So she's all excited and all gung ho and wants to call. It's weird that they want to make a call and call this person right away instead of doing a little Googling first. But okay. So next we have the three single gals. We have Seema and Carrie and Naya at a bar. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, they are drinking cosmopolitans, which actually is something that they do try to avoid. They don't make it, they always, I think Michael Patrick King basically said if they're drinking cosmopolitans, something really impressive or something, this is important, we have to pay attention. So otherwise, he usually has, these characters drink other beverages, but they're drinking Cosmos, and this is interesting. I think now Seema and Naya are dressed to get men. They're showing some arms, they're showing some cleavage. Carrie looks like their grandmother. Now she's showing off some leg, and she's got this ruffly, everything super layered thing. Her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she's got like this blue open-toed shoe, and I think she's wearing pantyhose with it. I wasn't quite feeling Carrie's look, but the other two look good. Again, Seema can't be in a color. We still have her in a copper, like a brown dress. But she looks cute, and she's got cute boots on. We'll see a little bit more of her later. Naya, I think, might end up, she could be the most interesting character on this show now, at least to me. She was talking about, last season I didn't like her, because she felt crowbarred in, she felt completely unnecessary, and she was just repeating a storyline we've heard before. We know the whole IVF, the Charlotte will they or won't they get knocked up story, very boring. But now she's coming into this, and she's talking about how she's only ever had two boyfriends. Like, she is a genuine, what I call a middle-aged virgin. And I was a middle-aged virgin. I married my high school sweetheart. We were together when I was 17, and then I divorced at 36. And to be in that bar at 36 and to not know anything about dating or being single other than what I'd watched on TV, or, I by this time, I not only had watched Sex and the City every episode 40 times, plus the DVD extras and all my DVDs. They used to come in those clear plastic trifold DVD cases, and I watched them so much that I wrecked the cases. I had a trivia game, like I was obsessed with Sex and the City. And when I became single, I just naturally assumed single life was like that, and it's not. It's not at all. And like Naya, while I was married, I hung out primarily with married people or, other people in like relationships. So when I would go celebrate and watch the Sex and the City movie, I would see it with my three closest girlfriends, but we were all married, you know? So the actual reality of being single versus what's presented to you, it's ridiculous. But for this reason, I think Naya now has become maybe one of the more authentic characters, because when you do find yourself in that situation, one of the first things you do is you go to single friends, because all your married friends, most of the time, the married couples you're friends with are also friends with your ex. And so you tend to make brand new friends. You tend to go into single. You tend to find people like Seema who can help you navigate through these uncharted territories. The Seema relationship thing, the Seema is what seems forced to me into this group, because Seema is so beautiful and charismatic, and she's in a profession that requires her to, build relationships. The idea that Seema is like, has no friends and just sort of glommed onto Carrie so hardcore and making Carrie her whole world is kind of bizarre to me. In the real world, Seema would have a ton of friends and would view Carrie as a client and barely try to squeeze her in to what I imagine would be a full schedule. But I want to see Naya now date, because Sex and the City women, when we start seeing them initially, they're already jaded. They already have, they've been disappointed, they've been rejected, they've gone through the motions, they've basically designed to only see red flags. And right now, we're giving Naya this whole fantasy thing where all these guys just want her, and they look at her, and they're all super handsome, and none of them are rejecting her, and none of them are disappointing. And I think we're going to see some pie in the face reality time for her if these writers know what they're doing, because yeah, it's not easy being single. And the problem is one of the problem with being a middle-aged virgin is finding love was so easy the first time. So you have these unrealistic expectations. There's a very good chance Naya's never been rejected or sexually disappointed based on her situation. So she's really like, she's living in kind of a fantasy world, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. But in this scene, I'll stop lying about Naya. In this scene, Seema comes to this bar so that she promotes coming to a hotel bar to basically find rich men. They have coin. They don't let just anybody off the street enter these hotel bars. So she's trying to pick up, I guess, rich dudes, but she gets picked up with the worst line ever by the alcohol sales guy. He's a sales distributor for a gin that they don't carry and that nobody's ever heard of. And so he calls her ma'am. He asks her if she drinks this gin. He calls her ma'am. She goes, "I'm just surprised you call me ma'am." And he's just like, "Isn't that what you call royalty?" No, no, it isn't. But okay, you're trying to get laid. We'll help you out. So Seema goes off. She hooks her fish, goes off with that guy. And then immediately some guy starts eyeballing Naya. And of course, she goes off because it's really that simple. Being single is just so easy and fabulous. So then we go to Seema's house, or Seema's apartment, whatever, her townhouse. And, okay, again, just a really ridiculous scene, but it's like old school, silly Sex in the City funny. This guy says, his name is Ed, by the way, and he suffers from erectile dysfunction. ED, Ed, get it? And again, silly, but again, the Sex in the City, kind of classic silly. And she's like, "That's okay." And Seema's being very cool. She's just, "Is this cool? Is this cool?" And Seema's very, very cool about the whole thing. But this guy pulls out a black leather, what looks like a suitcase, and not even a suitcase. It looks like if you were to take a fine, like wine or alcohol, and you put it in like a black leather case, which I assume, if he's an alcohol salesman, you would assume this is. But he pulls out this case, which apparently he brought to the bar. I mean, it looks like they're wearing the same clothes. Looks like they came directly from the bar to her place. So theoretically, this guy was carrying this penis pump. He pulls out this penis pump out of this exquisite leather case. And guys, I don't know anything about penis pumps, save for what I saw in Austin Powers, but that looked like a simple little plastic device. This thing is the most ridiculous steampunk debacle of a thing. It is just big and pumpy and loudy and really loud. And apparently, Michael Patrick King said that in order to make the sounds do right, they had to do like chicken cutlets and Tupperware or whatever. It's the most ridiculous sounding looking thing in the world. Like, Seema is really cool about it. I'd probably be pretty horrified. Um, but that's her night. Meanwhile, back at the stupidest relationship that doesn't make a lick of sense, Miranda is trying to get some sleep while Che is with all of their friends, smoking weed, playing video games, eating chips, all that stuff. And it doesn't none of this makes sense. Like, did Miranda like go over to Che's place just to hang out with these kids? And I want to say kids. We find out in this episode that Che is 46 years old. But this idea, was she partying with them and then said, "I got to go to sleep because I got to get up at 5 to make Brady pancakes"? I don't understand this life. I don't know why somebody would subject themselves to this life. I'd rather be on Steve's couch, frankly. That just looks terrible. Okay, so then the next morning, Carrie is walking around her house, and Seema tells her the penis pump story over the phone. And this stops Carrie dead in her tracks, and she does so in the middle of a bike lane, and a biker crashes into her. And yes, okay, if we want to get nitpicky, I'm sure he could have stopped. I don't know, but he swerved to miss her and crashed, and he busts his wrist pretty good. Now, this actor, this I love. I love when they kind of recycle the men, the male actors on this show, and they reuse them like they did the Prada guy, or they did Justin Theroux, or what? Not Justin. That's the you know what I'm saying. But that one guy who was like two different Carrie love interests. This is the guy who, and his name in this episode is George Campbell, but he was the guy from Peter from Yale that was at the synagogue that everybody was trying to set Charlotte up with, and she was all heartbroken. It was right the last guy to hit on Charlotte before she got proposed to by Harry. So they bring him again, and Carrie brings him to an urgent care. She goes on and on about this joke about this urgent care is where like one of the Olsen twins went. So she knew about this urgent care. I'm like, come on, does Carrie really like? We're supposed to believe Carrie's never needed an urgent care ever. Like she's never gotten a cold or anything. Who doesn't know where? If you've lived in an area your whole life, if you've spent like decades and decades at an apartment, you're telling me, all right, okay, but she knows about this urgent care because of an Olsen twin. And she brings him to it, and she carries, helps carry the bike, and helps him fill out his paperwork because his wrist hurts. And she finds out that he is, that he lives very close by. She finds out that he has a business partner. His emergency contact is a business partner. He's not gay. But she does think, well, he's broke. And when he goes into the doctor's office, she waits for him and calls Seema. And she has this conversation with Seema about, well, I'm helping him out because honestly, I'm a public figure. I can be Googled. He could find out exactly how much I have and sue the hell out of me, right? And she didn't get the idea that this guy had a lot of money. In fact, there's a problem with his credit card when he checks out, and he doesn't have her, he puts it on a different card, and he takes care of it himself. But it kind of just looks like this guy is kind of down on his luck, but very, very cute and somewhat intriguing, and lives somehow super, super broke, but lives in Carrie's neighborhood. I guess that's a thing. But yeah, she's talking to Seema, and Seema's having this conversation and saying, well, as far as penis pump guy is concerned, she's like, hey, he had great foreplay, followed by B plus sex, and quite frankly, I'm used to finishing myself off anyway. So, you know what, I'm going to stick around with penis pump guy. He's probably not so bad. All right, that's kind of sad and depressing, but realistic. Next, we have Miranda and Naya. Sitting there again, beautiful autumn colors. I love the pants that Naya's wearing. I'm not mad at this scene at all. But they're sitting and chatting. And Naya's bragging about the one night stand that she had and how great the walk of shame was. She's like, the walk of shame was actually kind of a walk of pride for me. And I get that. But also, a lot of women like this, I've been there. You try to do the one night stand thing, and you find out very quickly, casual sex isn't for me. That's not something that's actually as fun as they necessarily advertise. But she loved it. She enjoyed it. Good for her. And again, even as she's leaving the guy's place or the hotel, the doorman's like looking at her and checking her out. So Naya's still in this fantasy world. But she sees how tired Miranda is, and she's like, why don't you come stay with me? I'm tired of living alone. I don't enjoy living alone, and I could use some company, and you're so tired. And Miranda's like, you know what? I'm going to take you up on that offer. Now, at first, when I heard this, I was kind of bummed out. I'm like, oh, I hope that they don't couple up, which would just shut all of Naya's cool potential just down if they just went full-on lesbian here. Because originally, Naya's character, that was the purpose of Naya's character, was to be Miranda's love interest. It wasn't going to be Che. It was going to be Naya, which makes more sense because Miranda and Naya actually have things to talk about and things in common versus Miranda and Che, who have nothing in common at all, in any capacity. It's so weird to me. But they even mention, like, Miranda said something along the lines of, it's going to be like Laverne and Shirley from hell. And in the writer's room, they're talking about, oh, we're going to take advantage of this. We're going to have like an odd couple situation. and they're gonna have like a really cool buddy roommate thing going on with those two. So I hope so. I hope they don't les out. I hope they just have fun and have a little fun, keep it light. Okay, so Carrie decides to follow up with the poor down and out George Campbell in her neighborhood, and she goes and buys an absurd amount of soups, like 3 different soups, and comes to visit him because, and I should have mentioned, while he's in the waiting room, his business partner contacts him and they put her on FaceTime real quick. And they have a deadline, they have an important deadline to get done with an app that he's developing. And, this guy's always up in George Campbell's grill. But I gotta say, this apartment is just so sick. And I was disappointed after watching this episode, and I've been paying attention all week. I was actually looking for an article about this because I thought that they would talk about it in the writer's room. They did not. They didn't. There's nothing about it in Architectural Digest or just this place is so iconic. This is the most ridiculous. Like somebody curated the hell out of this, and this should be like something that any student studying interior design or mid-century art should absolutely be forced to go on a field trip to this apartment. If you were to Google like iconic black leather chair, you're going to get that Eames lounge in the corner or the Wasili that's upstairs in his bedroom. If you were to Google iconic coffee table, you're going to get the Noguchi coffee table, which is what's sitting there, and they shoot it even from the bottom up. Every single piece of furniture has an iconic name to it. It is like a standard. And he even has like a Calder mobile on the top. There are some pop arts, there's like this iconic kind of gold gummy bear in the corner that's a little bit more modern from a current Brooklyn artist. But most of this is like really hardcore mid-century. So I really would love to see more. But obviously she walks in, the premise being, oh, he's not broke after all. Well, no shit. Everything in here is like worth just so much money. Everything. It's so expensive. So she finds out cute George is rich and he's just making this app, and she brings him a whole bunch of soups and he's like, why would you do that? You don't think I can make my own soup? But she helps him out with his, she doesn't know Python, but she types 90 words a minute, and since her wrists are uninjured, she helps him type whatever he needs typed up to develop his app. And they start to make out on his couch, and which I'm sure also if you Googled iconic couch, this thing would show up. But he gets interrupted by his business partner, who's bringing home his dry cleaning, which is really weird. Very, very married couple sort of situation. So Miranda and Carrie, the next scene, they're going in and looking for a bed for Miranda to move in with Naya. And in this scene, they're looking at some gross, look like bed bug covered, mentioned in beds that look gross. But Miranda and Carrie are talking about being more accepting. Carrie's like, well, I thought he was broke. He's not. I thought he was gay. He's not. I thought I thought urgent care meant urgent. Nope, took forever. So she's gonna just sort of hold off on making, assumptions about anything. And I'm confused. All right, so Miranda, I love Miranda's sweater. I love autumn colors. I love how it looks with Miranda's hair. Carrie, I'm confused. I honestly don't know how I'm feeling about this outfit. I love that dress. That dress is stunning. I think I love the shrug with the dress. I think it's kind of cute, but it's all kind of old lady-ish. And it's maybe the hat that's throwing it off, but I'm not mad at the hat by itself either. It's weird, and it's like it has a bunch of sparkles on the beret with the big feather plumage coming out. But I don't hate it. It's just weird, but I don't hate it. Okay, and then next we go into the photo shoot for the Rock or whatever, and they're jumping up on a trampoline. They're having a good time. Charlotte brings Rock to this photo shoot, and Charlotte is dressed head to toe in classic vintage Ralph Lauren, and she looks to die for. She is, again, they really did Charlotte good in this episode. She is gorgeous. Harry sneaks in as like the walking, the real life, hello there, fellow kid meme. You know that meme with Steve Buscemi? That's what he's doing. He puts on the wig and he thinks he's pulling off high schoolers, so he's walking around like a weirdo. He's going up to the cameraman asking if this is going to be a sexy shoot. The cameraman just looks at him with disgust and contempt. But he should have probably called the police. I mean, it's so creepy. It's just so creepy. And then Harry, is mollified. He realizes, okay, this is professional. And then he goes over to Charlotte, and Charlotte's like, look, I know you're mad. Let's be real about what this is about. It's not about protecting Brock. It's about you don't like to be the heavy, and now I get to be the fun one. And, you better get out of here immediately before Rock sees you dressed like this and never trusts you again. And so he gets on out of there. All right. And then the next scene, guys, this is what I've been waiting for a really long time. The show now gets very, very meta. Che is watching a focus group about Che Passa, that hilarious sitcom. And first, they get into, there's an old, Jersey woman complimenting Tony Danza's hair. It's so lush. And then this old man talks about how he wasn't comfortable, Tony Danza, when Che was crying. And this genderqueer from Brooklyn kind of chimes in and says, well, it makes being non-binary seem like it's a sad thing, and it's not a sad thing. And Che's behind the two-way mirror, and she's just like, oh my God, yeah, see, that's exactly what I said. I told him that a million times, and Che is really kind of enjoying the focus group. And then the guy who's directing the focus group, he notices this non-binary person. He's like, well, look, you've been very quiet. We'd really like to get your take on this whole thing. And I know some people criticize it didn't go hard enough on Che, but I thought it was a pretty good reading. But basically, it was like saying Che is like this walking boomer joke, a performative BS, deep fake of what the non-binary experience really is. And I didn't like it at all. Plus, of course, you would never be able to afford an apartment that big in Bushwick. And so the guy running the focus group asks everybody, does anybody else have a problem with the Che Diaz character, or the Che character played by Che Diaz? And everybody raises their hand. And he's like, well, we have a Yahtzee. So it was kind of good. At first, I thought that they finally got it. That they finally maybe understood that Che is a suck character. And I was wrong. And granted, it does sort of, I think maybe they were intending to make it seem like it was the audience that was stupid, and that Che's great, and just these idiots from Times Square that they picked up to do this focus group. They don't know anything, man. But I thought it was a genius moment in this show. It was very meta. But before you get too excited, I'm going to stop here for a minute, and I'm going to let you listen to Michael Patrick King in the writer's room talk with the writers about how they still apparently feel about Che. So I don't know if this is just straight up gaslighting, or if this is what happens when you are so successful that you only surround yourself with yes people who tell you exactly what you want to hear. But please do enjoy this moment of zen with Michael Patrick King and his writers.
Now we get to the exciting thing from the writing room. Our feelings about Che. and the way the audience responded to Che. It was a real interesting experience to have written this character that we thought of as a hero, a strong, creative, confident outsider individual, and played perfectly by Sada Ramirez, and then have the whole world go, nope. No.
Nope, with a me.
Nope. Too confident, too cocky, too sure of themselves. And it's all complicated because Che also has been assigned as the destroyer of Steve.
No, and the destroyer of a character they love's marriage. And so,
which is, you can't destroy a marriage, folks, just because you're a strong non-binary stand-up.
It just doesn't work. Non-binary Camilla Parker Bowles.
It's not like
21st century.
It's not kryptonite. You can't there's a happy marriage. They saw my stand-up set. Now they split up. And so the interesting journey for us in response was in the first episode, wow, that's an interesting new character, friend of Carrie's. In the third episode, they saw the stand-up. Everybody would say to me, Che's my new favorite character. I mean, where that Che Miranda episode went nuclear was in Tragically Hip, where they're in the kitchen and they finger while Carrie's in the bed peeing in a Snapple bottle, if you need to be reminded of that. It turned for people, and they ran with it.
So apologies to anybody who was made nauseous by that clip. They really don't get it. I don't know what to tell you. I don't believe, again, that anybody ever existed that said, oh, Che is the new, coolest, best character. Like, nobody. Even from that first episode and that tedious, that awful, awful podcast, nobody's liking Che. So stop with the gaslighting. So next, we have Che and Miranda in Che's apartment, and Miranda is trying desperately to cheer up, Che, and it's not working. But she's waving her bare wrists around. And again, I'm going to remind you guys, look at the size of that thing. You would be able to see it, right? But when you go close up on her hand, it looks almost like a tiny little dot, maybe. Maybe there's a dot there. Maybe somebody remembered to do something. But it just sort of seems like they either forgot about the temporary tattoo, or they just took a little Sharpie mark and said, boom. And I thought they did that last week, too. There's a scene where Miranda's waving her wrists around on the therapist's couch, and it looks like she doesn't have a tattoo. And then she immediately is waving that same wrist around, face up, in the elevator with Carrie, saying she had a lot of things to say in that therapy session, especially about Brady not going to college. And originally, when I'm watching it on my phone or something, I'm like, oh, it's gone, it disappeared. But when I watch it on full screen, I go close up, it's there, but it's just really, really tiny. So I don't know, I think they just sort of shrank it or did something, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be kind of big. I don't know. It's weird. But it looks like it would be bigger, more substantial, that you would actually see this thing. Versus tiny little, it looks like a zit almost on her arm. All right. Tattoo watch over. Oh, let me get back to, with Miranda and Che, Miranda's desperately trying to cheer up Che. It's not working. Che is like, I spent 46 years of my life, building my identity, and people were able to rip it apart in 1 hour. And Che is really upset and needs some time alone. And Miranda's trying to kind of be like a mom type or a cheerleader, and it's grating. I understand what she's trying to do, but I would probably be a little annoyed too. And Che is just like, I need some time, and Miranda's like, okay, I'll leave you alone and I'll see you tomorrow. And Che's like, well, I think I might need a few days. Is that okay? Che really wants to be alone for a really long time, and you know what? I think Miranda should do Che a favor and just give her all the time they need. I think Miranda should just get up and go and let Che lick their wounds or do whatever, and let Che call them and maybe get back together. Now, this is such a dumb relationship. There's nothing about this that... But at this point, it's just codependence, right? I mean, I understand being around Che because Che is really upset, and Shay doesn't have a TV show, and they canceled the TV show, and she's not going to be able to afford this apartment. And I understand there are problems, but so maybe she sticks around just to be nice. But come on, they're just even their fighting styles are different. They're just the worst. So we get back to Seema, and Seema's with the pump guy again, and he's having a great time, and he seems to have finished, and so she is not. So she reaches in for a vibrator. She goes into her goodie drawer, and of course it's gold. Of course it's a gold vibrator. What else would you expect from Seema? And she finishes herself off, and he was like all angry about it, and he's like, "That's not cool." And so he runs off. A very classic Sex in the City scene. And she's like, "What do you mean? You can have a penis pump. I can't do this, And she doesn't even care that he left. She just goes back with the vibrator and finishes herself off. She's like, "Yeah, show yourself out. I'm having fun." So then we have Carrie, dressed as some sort of school marm. I didn't understand this outfit. She's coming in, and she's dating this guy. And one of the big storylines with this guy is he has an app that's due in like 48 hours, right? Like he's got to really be on top of it. He's got to work day and night to not miss this very important app deadline. But so of course Carrie needs to hang out with him constantly all the time. This is one of the things that Sex in the City, I know it's like a very Sex in the City thing to do, but it's something that they definitely, one of the many things they get wrong about dating. But this idea that as soon as they meet a new guy, that this new guy consumes all of their days and nights for a whole week. Like, it's like, "Oh, I just met this guy. We had 5 dates in like 10 days. Like, but why though? Like, don't you guys have schedules or lives or. And I think that's the biggest BS thing with Sex in the City was I realized, like, how do these women have all this time to date all of these men and to always be perfect and never have the same outfit twice and always be shopping and then always be dining with each other and maintaining all these different friendships while also having fantastic careers and getting their hair done right every time. I found it kind of exhausting. Luckily, most men don't do that. Most men aren't like, "Hey, let's constantly see each other all the time, every time, and, consume with each other for 5 weeks or for 5 days or whatever before you dump me over something silly." But she goes over to his apartment. She's dressed she's not trying to seduce. She's like kind of very casual. And she's like wearing this dowdy skirt with this top. But at least her hair is down, so I'll give her that. And she goes and hangs out with him. And then immediately while they're in his bed, the partner FaceTimes again. He's like, "Oh, I gotta get that. You were supposed to send me the files and you didn't." He's like, "Oh, hold on a moment." And then this guy starts talking to Carrie. It's so creepy and awful. And he's like, "Look, I just need him to get out of his own way, and he just needs to get this app done." It's like, yeah, if I had heard anybody, if I had met some dude, no matter how cute he was, no matter how fine that apartment, if the guy has a 48-hour deadline, I'd probably be like, "Okay, I'll see you next week, or I'll see you in a few days," whatever. Like, what is the sense of urgency? And then this guy is kind of like pleading with Carrie, and it's so uncomfortable. It's so creepy. This guy has no boundaries. He's always in George Campbell's spot. So she like leaves. She's like, "Look, I'm out of here." And she's calling to George. He's walking down this giant staircase, and she's telling him, "I'm gonna go. You take care of your deadline, and you're clearly already married. You have a husband." He's like, "No, no, no. It's more like a McCartney-Lennon thing." And she's like, "Well, then that would make me Yoko Ono. I'm out." And so she gets out of there, and just like that, something along the lines of, "I guess I was out in the dating world again, but at least I'm not afraid to get back on the bike." Something to that effect. But again, these are kind of storylines we were used to seeing. This episode felt the most like Sex in the City. And I'm not mad at it. So congratulations to Cynthia Nixon. I will say I was watching the Sidley twins, and they were talking about, one of them was saying how she feels that Michael Patrick King is like an abusive husband, that right now he's handing us flowers because he plans on beating us down next week. So I already know some of the things next week. They showed the preview. We're going to see Carrie at a widows convention, which sounds awful, but I Googled it and it's a thing. But it sounds like, again, something more depressing. If we can get off the widow bandwagon for a little bit more than just one episode, that'd be fabulous. And they show Steve arguing with Miranda that he doesn't want to leave the house after all, that it's his house. So maybe next week we see some justice for Steve. And we also see a scene where Carrie is describing that she has, over the years, somewhat cyber-stalked Aiden. And she knows that he lives in Virginia, and he got divorced 5 years ago. So Aiden is a divorcee in Virginia. We're starting to see more on their Twitter site. On the And Just Like That Twitter site, we're starting to see more and more of Carrie and Aiden's relationship. Obviously, they're going to get back together full swing in a very quick manner. It sort of indicates that she's rushing back in with Aiden and that they're really taken with each other. So I don't know. I know that also, this is episode 5. When critics received the episodes for review, they were given the first 7 episodes first. And they already knew about Aiden. They already were involved in the Aiden storyline by the time they watched episode 7. Okay, so Aiden could come back as soon as next episode. I think on the 7th episode is when you're going to really see Aiden make the full comeback. And none of the critics saw any Samantha Jones. I imagine, I'm just guessing here, they're probably going to leave Samantha Jones cameo, the Kim Cattrall cameo, for the very last episode, you know? And it's fine. They got Seema right now. It's the only reason Seema makes sense is to sort of replace Samantha. But I'm sorry, you just can't replace the Queen Cattrall. So again, thank you guys for hanging in. I know my timing's not consistent, so that's my homage to the inconsistency of these episodes. You can follow me on Hobbs Wig at Twitter and join in the fun. Also, I don't do this for a living. I don't have a Patreon. I'm a resume writer. But if you want the Hermes bag of the Birkin bag of of resumes, I'm your gal. They're very expensive. They're thousands of dollars, and there is a waiting list. But if you're so inclined or know somebody who is, I'm the best. I'll have a link to my consultation in the comments. And thank you guys, and I'll see you next week. I'm telling you now, I'm gonna do this throughout this entire season. Now, if they have a season 3, I'm not sure, but I am gonna stick with this no matter what, come rain or come Spain. Over the next 4 episodes, I think they were doing 10 of these, 10 or 11, I don't know, but I'm sticking to it. So see you guys next week.